Good morning. This is John Blackman. I am the president of the Harlan Institute, and welcome to the 2025 Harlan Institute Virtual Supreme Court competition. Today, we are in the semifinal round, the case of Patriots versus Loyalists. Should America declare independence in the year 1776? We have two players today, Sarah Ebden from Creek High School and Sarang Kim from the same school. Team number 24359. Counts will begin whenever you are ready.
Thank you. Distinguished delegates and members of the Congress, under the British government, the colonies have not received any of their promised social or economic security. Instead, our rights are constantly forsaken and our funds levied at pleasure. My name is Sarang Kim.
And my name is Sarah Ebden.
And in our time before the court, we will petition for the colonies to be separated from Great Britain. We will be addressing this petition with the following two main points. First, the British violated the core principle of the consent of governed. Second, the British economically exploited the colonies without the representation in government.
Building upon our first point, the British taxed the colonists without the representation in Congress. In the Stamp Act Congress, it was declared that it is inseparably essential to the freedom of a people and the undoubted right of Englishmen that no taxes be imposed on them but with their own consent, given personally or by their representatives. As it is the right of Englishmen to give consent, this right should be entitled to the colonists as well through the election of senators or direct democracy. This establishes the principle of consent of the governed, following that people must give consent in the way that they are governed. Continuing on, life, liberty, and property are the undoubted rights of all people and should not be infringed under any circumstance. In the declarations and resolves of the First Continental Congress, it was declared that colonists can claim, demand, and insist on as their indubitable rights and liberties, which cannot be legally taken from them, altered, or abridged by any power whatever without their own consent by the representatives and their several provincial legislatures. This declares that everybody is entitled to unalienable rights of life, liberty, and property. The British have repeatedly violated this concept. Paper is a luxury in this economy and has to be made from rags.
Can I interrupt you, please? I appreciate you speak of these inalienable rights, and I think Thomas Jefferson has a beautiful pen, a beautiful quill that he wrote these words in the Declaration. But how do we know what these rights are and where we get them from? How do we know this?
John Locke said the president in his second treatise of government, in which he declared that every man is entitled to life, liberty, and property.
Okay,
Thus,
I got that. So, I mean, John Locke was a Scottish writer. He lived about 80 or 90 years ago. So what, right? He was just a writer. He had no government position. We didn't vote for him. I mean, he's not God. Why do we take John Locke's writing as a basis to declare independence?
John Locke was not the first to establish these rights. Rather, he was the first to write these on paper. If we do not follow these, then we are practically slaves in our economy, and funds are going to be levied from us at pleasure. Continuing on, if the rights of the colonists are not being secured by the British government, secession is only...
Why do you have a right to not have your funds levied from you at pleasure? I mean, you are a colony, right? That seems kind of implicit in the agreement.
We do not have the right to have our funds levied at pleasure because we have no representation in Parliament. In the declarations and resolves of the Continental Congress, it establishes that for taxes to be levied from us, we have to have representation in government. Otherwise, we have no say in how funds are levied from us.
But, Councillor, there's plenty of people in England that don't have representation in Parliament. There's women and there's people who don't own property. Why is it different in the colonies?
It is different in the colonies. Wait, can you repeat the question, please?
There's plenty of people in England who can be taxed who don't have representation in Parliament, including people who don't own property over 40 shillings, or women, or etc.
Your Honor, the people who don't own property or can otherwise be taxed from Great Britain, they should rather be taxed by the representatives they have chosen and elected with their own people who understand their problems and their rights and can prioritize them, other than a mother country that's thousands of miles away that it takes over 6 months to just communicate a single message.
Additionally, Thomas Paine declared that it was absurd for an island to regulate a colony. Communications are across thousands of miles and takes months to relay. How much can happen with the span of
Counselor,
6 months?
let me just, what's a colony? Can you just define what a colony is for me?
A colony is a territory that falls under the legislation of a government.
So if we are a colony, we're not in England, we're a colony. What right could we possibly have to representation? Isn't it up to England to decide to give us what we can't demand? It's like the father, it's like a son demanding something with a father. It doesn't work that way.
It is the petitioner's contention that every colonist should be entitled to the same rights as Englishmen. In our attempts to petition, as is stated in the English Bill of Rights, we have been killed, i.e., the Boston Massacre. We should be entitled to the same rights as
I
Englishmen.
get the argument, and I appreciate, but does the English Bill of Rights apply to all Englishmen, or is it just those in England?
It applies to all Englishmen. Many colonists fall under British descent and fall under the legislation of England and thus should be entitled to these same rights. Continuing on, in John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, it is upheld that all men have a right to remain in a state of nature as long as they please, and in case of intolerable oppression, civil or religious, to leave the society they belong to and enter into another. When men enter into a society, it is by their voluntary consent, and thus they have a right to demand and insist upon the conditions and the performance of them, and previous limitations as form an equitable original compact. The right to secede is especially protected, as we have voluntary consent in order to enter into society, and
Well,
thus the right to
voluntary consent. I mean, I thought consent has to be expressed. That is, I sign the piece of paper saying I consent. How do you have, I mean, where is this contract? Where is this compact? Where do we find evidence of this consent you speak of? Can you show me a piece of paper that has it?
Your Honor, John Locke's Second Treatise of
Or
Government
back to John
establishes
Locke
that
again. No, I know, but I mean, my question is, has anyone actually signed? I mean, I love John Locke as much as the next person, but where is this compact? Is there anything actually signed?
no, but many philosophies set the precedent for this idea, and they establish that in entering a society, men enter it for their own protection and have their rights protected by a government. In being forsaken, we are expressly violating the rights of every man alive on this globe. I pass the floor to my co-counsel, Sarang Kim.
Thank you, co-counsel. To address the second point we have proposed, the overexertion of taxes has led to the need to revolutionize. Acts such as the Stamp Act and Tea Act were enforced without notice to the colonies and have put a strain on their economy. The Stamp Act was a departure from previous colonies that were intended to regulate trade. Instead, this was made specifically to raise revenue for British
Is
property.
the Stamp Act still in effect?
No, Your Honor, but it is one.
Why was it repealed? Maybe that's a useful history for us to talk about for a moment.
It was repealed because the British believed it was unfair, only for them to replace it with the Boston Port Act, which repeatedly restricted trade.
He jumped over the part I was asking about. I think you anticipated my next question, which is good. But the Stamp Act was repealed because they realized it was unpopular. Maybe that's some evidence that we can still engage in diplomatic relations with the mother country, and we don't need to, declare war. I mean, isn't maybe we'll put Boston aside for a minute, right? Maybe the Yankees and the Patriots will just never get along, but maybe that history is evidence of reconciliation.
Your Honor, we have sent out many attempts at reconciliation. Take the Olive Branch petition, in which we declared our loyalty to the king, only for this to be completely ignored and chosen to be disobeyed by the king.
Continuing on, letters from a farmer in Pennsylvania to the inhabitants of the British colonies concerning the Stamp Act by John Dickinson, 1768, talks about the right to tax themselves in consideration of their representatives and the privilege of having their own of being under their own legislation. These rights were not accounted
Counselor,
for.
the colonies still have their own colonial legislatures. Those can still tax them, those can still govern them. Those haven't been severely interfered with, have they?
Your Honor, could you repeat the question, please?
The colonies still have their own colonial legislatures. Have those been
Yes.
severely interfered with, or can they still operate as self-governing
Yes.
entities under the British control?
Yes, Your Honor. The Massachusetts Government Act seems to show His Majesty revoked electoral council for the sole benefit of his own power, therefore interfering with the colony's economy. These rights were not the right of the representatives and privilege of their own legislation were not accounted for from the British Parliament and for the colonists. So how should these taxes pertain to them? Next, the British Parliament
So,
had oversight.
Council, would all of the our contentions or our issues with the British be solved if they just gave us a representative in Parliament? If the British were to say, "Hey, America, you can have a representative tomorrow," would we still need to rebel?
No, no, Your Honor, because as Thomas Paine has stated in his document Common Sense, the sheer amount of distance between the mother country and the colonies is an issue in itself because of how long it takes to communicate, even with a representative, although the representative could help a lot of the problems with taxation without representation. the ma- this the Massachusetts Government Act revokes the power from the Electoral Council for the British Parliament's power, and this seems to be irrelevant to mercantilism, but rather was akin to forcing the colonies into servitude. Moving on, the colonies are could be economically independent and secede. Secession is a right that should be reinforced to prevent revolution.
Can I pause you for a second, Counselor? So, I mean, when you say succession, I mean, we call it succession. England would call it a civil war, right? That's how they would call it.
Yes.
And I think you would agree with me that England is the greatest military power on the planet. Do we agree on that part?
Yes, sir.
And I think you'd also agree that, we the colonies don't have that great of a military. General Washington's doing the best he can, but he can barely keep his troops fed and clothed. How can we possibly go up against the greatest military in the world with, you know, a bunch of Massachusetts militiamen who have these rifles from their homes? How can we possibly fight this great force?
Your Honor, what we lack in strength, we make up for in will. What reason does the British have to constantly oppress us at every possible instance? We are being killed on the streets of Boston. Our kin are
And we'll
being
be killed in
murdered.
Lexington and Concord. We'll be killed in every other city in Brooklyn and New York. We'll be killed across the map. I mean, isn't the answer to bloodshed to try and stop bloodshed, not to try and spill more blood?
Your Honor, the idea of spilling bloodshed for the colonists is so that we can prevent this in the future, Your Honor. So, yes, in a sense, but we have to take the sacrifice for us and our future generations to strive in liberty and independence without the tyranny of the British government.
Additionally, we are already being murdered. Take the Boston Massacre. Revolutionaries are being hung, disobeying their right to petition. Soldiers are being quartered into our homes without our consent, watching our everyday moves.
Continuing on, the Virginia Resolves on the Stamp Act by Patrick Henry supplied that the right of taxation is given to the people or representatives. We argue that this right of taxation is not given to the colonists and is an unreasonable tax to expect from the colonists if they do not receive this representation. To conclude, the government is intended to serve the people rather than force them into servitude. Power and respect should be
What if you're
mutually
wrong?
decided.
I mean, Counselor, what if you're wrong? What if we engage in this act of declaring independence and we lose and our rights will be forever abandoned? In other words, if we don't win, our rights will not be better treated; they'll be worse treated. Isn't it better to try and maintain the status quo than to try and go down a road that will lead to even greater tyranny, as we describe it?
Your Honor, we have two options before us: remain in our state of a deplorable government or take the chance at a better life. As the petitioner sees it, taking the chance at a better life is much more favorable. If we do not act now, then the British government will become strengthened in might, and we will never have the chance to act again.
Power, sorry, to resume, power and respect should be mutually decided
Wait, Council,
amongst
sorry,
them.
one last question really quickly. So it seems that we've talked a lot about what the British has done to you and not much about what the British has done for you. I mean, there's been a lot about taxation without representation, but doesn't the mere fact that Britain has extended so many resources to protect the colonies, both from France and Native Americans, give them a right to rule you?
Your Honor, although there's many things the British has done for us, we also have to realize and emphasize and highlight the fact that recently there are more things the British has done to harm us than give us the benefit. And
Okay,
we
thank
have
you,
to think
Counselor.
about the
Time's up. Okay, thank you.
thank you.
All right, the case is submitted. Thank you. Very good. For freshmen, this was a very strong performance. I think uh, you have a lot of spunk. You have a lot of like fight, and that's very good. You did not want to take any of our arguments sitting down. That was very good. Yeah, no, yeah, with this one line, it's like we have will. I'm like, yes, go, go, fight, fight, fight. And sometimes there's an expression when the law's on your side, tell people the law. When the facts are on your side, tell them the facts. When you have neither, you pound the table. And sometimes you pound the table, and you pounded the table, which was good. Um, just in terms of some constructive feedback, I think we need to balance a little bit more between the two teams. I think what you tried to do was that you would Sarah do issue one and Sarang did issue two, and
Yes.
that sounds good in theory, but will never work out in practice because
Yeah.
the judges will sort of direct where they want to go. So I think the better approach when there's two team members is to sort of alternate. Sarah gets question number one and Sarang gets question two, and you sort of bounce back and forth. And you don't need to have them say, "Oh, my co-counsel answered this part." Just it's got to be a little more smooth. Um, Sarang, do you have a cough or something? You were coughing a lot. I don't know if that was something. It was like just you kind of cleared your
Oh,
throat.
I'm sorry. I have a very dry throat right
Yeah,
now, and
that's
I ran
okay.
out
Yeah,
of water.
just something to.
I apologize.
No,
Yes.
no, I understand it happens. Just something to think about. There's a famous
Yes.
Supreme Court case, the Affordable Care case, argued in 2012, and the top
Yes.
lawyer for the government has a very famous scene. He took a drink of water at the U.S. Supreme Court, and he started speaking, and then he started choking, and then you just heard silence for about 10 seconds.
Oh my
And
goodness.
he literally it went down the wrong pipe. He was choking on the water. The U.S. Supreme Court in the biggest case of his life. And what was amazing about that, if I tell this
Oh my
story,
gosh.
is he went, you could actually hear him clinking glasses and getting some more water. And then he repeated his opening cold from memory, verbatim. So that is talent. I mean, Shemaya mentioned in the round to have your opening remarks committed to memory. That's what the best advocates do, because once you
Mhm.
have it memorized, if you stop in the middle, it's like, Your Honor, let me start again, and then just you blow them away. Um, in terms of the sort of
Mhm.
argumentation, I think you have a good command of the documents. I think you tried to pivot back to your stronger point. Um, students love talking about John Locke and philosophy, but these are practical men, the framers, right? They were trying to avoid
Mhm.
war, and I think you need to have a little bit more ready to talk about the practical consequence of what declaring independence would mean. There's not a good answer, but I think you need to just. I felt like you were trying to fight it a bit, and you have to sort of embrace it and sort of
I'm
deal with
sorry.
it. Don't apologize. You're a freshman. This is your first time doing this. This is really really strong. Um, but I think the two of you were just very. I can see prepared a lot, and you had a lot of things at your disposal.
Mhm.
And with any moot court, and I think Shemai and Lizzie will tell you this: practice is the only way to get better. There's no
Mhm.
substitute for doing these sorts of rounds. You can practice at home and in front of a mirror 100 times, and with your friend over FaceTime, right? But until you actually get in front of three judges, we were tough on you, the three of us. We were not easy. This was not a light round. We pushed you
Mhm.
hard only because we saw you could. I mean, I've been doing this for a while. I usually know within a minute or two how hard I can push because I don't want to push people, at least in the first round, beyond their level. It doesn't work well. So when I see, oh,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to level up a bit, right? And then, okay, just turn the knob just a little bit higher level and see how it goes. But that's very good.
Thank
Lizzie and
you.
Shmai, any thoughts or comments on their performance?
Yeah, Lizzie, you can go first.
Okay, I think basically everything he said, that was great. Um, Make sure
Mhm.
you're communicating about when you're speaking. Like, even if you can't alternate because one person knows the answer better, just like like lean forward a little bit or like tap the other person so they
Yeah,
know.
I saw you did a
Um,
tap, but that's why I saw the tap.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I really liked your command of the documents. At the very beginning, it kind of looked like you were reading off of notes. I think it's hard on Zoom to tell like whether that's true or not. So just try to keep eye contact with the camera. But I think overall, this was an incredible round. You did a really good job of letting us kind of steer your argument. I think there was an instinct to kind of go back to your prepared remarks, but I wish you understood really well. But I think you were also willing to kind of follow the vein of what the judges want to talk about, which is a difficult skill to develop. So great job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'd echo everything. That was impressive for anyone, doubly impressive for people who were so young. Like I was blown away because the thing that usually takes them longest to get in moot court is that like poise, that polish, that like unflappability no matter what anyone throws at you. And you guys have that at like 14, which is like baffling.
Well,
But
thank you.
so well done. Yeah, I would echo everything everyone said. I think the only thing that I would add to that is like I think first of all, I think you guys are really good at staying like on theme, on brand, like what you're like you get a core idea and you say it over and over and over again, and that's how you get people to remember it, which is awesome. And what I got from you was taxation with that representation and people are being murdered. I think I think we should add like I think if we could add like a third thing there because if there was because like first of all your passion and like when you have like a really visceral point like that, like, oh, they're brutalizing us. That's an awesome thing to go back to. But it felt like it was there was a point where it was the answer to like seven questions where maybe it should have been to like two or three and then like pivot to something else. But that's very
Yeah.
nitpicky feedback. You guys were awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, you have any questions for us?
Not really.
Not really. Thank you though.
Yes.
That's fair. All right, well, that's okay. Thank you very much, and I wish both of you the best of luck, and I'll be
Yeah,
in touch
best of luck.
later this week or early next week with the results, okay?
Lovely to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Have a